Hi, Trina Wright here, and it is day 51 of 365 days of realizations. So, I want to keep moving on this sort of theme that we've been exploring over the last few days that is connected to this reflection creation kind of game that we're playing within this illusion as a huge, big part of it. And then we've been dancing with feelings of unworthiness and worthiness, to use that as an example, which is often hinged on doubt. So, where I want to go with it today, what feels really relevant, at least for me, as some realizations, is that yesterday we established that we create based on evidence that we see and then moving in a direction of that. So, we've created something that was unworthy, enhancing, so to speak. But in that moment, I think what I had touched on yesterday is we get to decide and choose, because I think one of the things that gets in all of our way is a kind of belief that why would we have created that? Like, why would I create something that doesn't feel good to me? I get it that I would create something that feels good, but why would I create something that doesn't feel good? And now that I'm aware, now that I'm living a life of like a heightened sense of self-awareness or a heightened understanding of how all of this works, vibrationally speaking, and what I put out, so why would I then continue to create things that seem like they're being created by default or that I just don't seem to make sense? And why do I have to then take responsibility for that? Even though it's only in taking up responsibility for it that we can sort of let the charge go, settle with it, and then be able to step in a different place. So that was that process that I was talking about, which I want to deepen in today, which is a resetting process where you get the evidence from the reflection. And then in that moment, you say, okay, I get that this is a reflection loop. I get that there is that reflection back to me, this mirroring of my vibration, sort of like consciousness awaking you up to say to you, hey, look, this is what you're creating. It's like your higher self or your inner being's way to communicate to you through this physical, see it, feel it, smell it, taste it, touch it environment, which is what you signed up for. But at the same time, let's not forget that not only is it reflection based, it's creation based. So ultimately, we are the creator of that experience. So in that moment, wouldn't it be cool if when we saw something we didn't like, we just said, great, created it. Thank you, higher being. Thank you, inner being. Thank you, source, God, whatever you want to call it, for showing me this thing that I was obviously wanting to see through the designed way that I was supposed to see it. Now I'm going to take that and move back into my creative mode, so that it's this two-step to the process that I see where we create and then it's given back to us, and then we fine tune and then we create and then it's given back to us all the time in our own unlimitedness, in our own epicness of who we really are. There doesn't even really need to be that bouncing back and forth, because we could instantly manifest or create whatever we wanted right away. But because we came here, because we're fine tuning, because we're constantly wanting to expand, because it's an expansion based experience, because one of the driving forces is to fine tune my creation, and that as soon as I reach one level of creation, I want another one and I want another one, because I am ever more expanding into the more of who I am. How do you express infinity? How do you express source? What would that look like? And there is an infinite numbers of expressions of that, and it's fun to play in that. So remembering that it's just a game, seeing it as this two-step inward process, because all of consciousness exists within me. I am just seeing back the reflection of what I have manifested through this physicality that seems so darn real that sometimes I get lost in it. Accept that, be okay with it, but then come back into the full remembrance that, oh yeah, that's right, I'm using this game board to show myself something that I am learning so that I can be a better creator, flip back into creator mode, go back into that. And it's funny to me because I don't know, maybe no one will have know it, and I know limited to nothing about it, but I do know that when my children play Minecraft, there is what is called a creator mode, and I love that. I love that terminology. So let's go from reflective mode to creator mode, from reflection mode to creation mode, however you want to look at it. See that as just part of the process. And when you miscreate, or when it's never a miscreation, because remember, you're always telling yourself something, you're always giving yourself evidence, you're always saying, hello, hello, I'm your inner being. I'm trying to tell you something. You don't seem to be listening. Not really, but maybe you didn't get it quite as fully as you needed to. There's no way to get it better than to see it in that tangible, smell it, taste it, feel it, experience it, touch it, move around with it, jump up and down with it way, so that then you can say, okay, well, tried that. Now I prefer this. Now I prefer this. Now I prefer this. And it's just a process. There's no judgment attached. There's no getting it right. There's no getting it done. It's just an ever ongoing work in progress. Cool. So when we come to then something like doubt and worthiness, we just accept that for the most part, maybe not forever, but it is an incremental process of in every moment, can I choose both the thought, both the vibration, both the remembrance, both the activity, both the affirmations, both the action that is going to take me closer to the feeling of worthiness, to the feeling of infiniteness, to knowing who I really am in every moment, and not take my cue from the unworthiness. Simple as that. Because we can't ever get rid of something, because we can't ever fully expand so far beyond the relevancy of things, because we are on this physical plane, it still makes sense that in any given moment we could activate doubt. In any given moment we could have that activation of unworthiness, because we're bouncing our creations off of each other, so to speak, even though it's all happening within inside of me. That's a whole nother conversation. But because of that bounce back, because of that reflection back, the best thing to do is just take it, move, back into creation, back into creation, back into creation mode. And that will be the fun of it. The other thing I think is super important that I wanted to spend a few minutes focusing on today is this idea of seeing that evidence when we see from the reflection, okay, I'm going to fine tune it, but how about we take a few minutes to celebrate some things? And I think in our interesting collective that we all are responsible for creating, we often want to see a really big, tangible, physical thing to demonstrate to ourselves that we are a really good manifestor, a really good creator. So we want to see like a sports car, we want to see an epic house on the ocean, on and on and on, as that epitome of reflection. And yet I wanted to share something really, really profound for me. So I think I've shared in other videos before that I used to be consumed with a feeling of yearning, like a feeling that I just needed to have something that wasn't quite there. And I'm happy to say that that does not exist for me. Like, it just doesn't. Sharing these realizations just feels like a natural flow. It just feels like a logical step. It's even the lining up with the realizations is coming from this place of the understanding of who I am, furthering, expanding, deepening. There's no yearning attached to it. So I see that as a really epic manifestation. I mean, I spent more than half my life in that feeling of yearning, in that feeling of sort of discontent, peak after peak experience, followed often by a valley that's popped into a peak, and just living my life like that. And now I don't have any of that. It's just like constant state of one delicious thing after another. Some of it being high flying, really cool, awesome things that everyone outside of me would say, wow, look at that. And other times just an inner state of this flowing peace where I don't need a peak experience to pull me somewhere because I know it comes from inside of me. Second is I have this epic partnership, this aligned partnership with my partner, Frank, that is the culmination of everything I ever wanted in my life. Like just the other day, we were together in the evening choosing to listen to a spiritual teaching, a really high-flying thing, and we are both in resonance about this form of teaching, this idea of tuning in and being an epic creator and the whole illusion and playing in this game, and how do we fine-tune more and more in that process. And we were both delighting in it, like we were just in it, sharing it. And I had this just moment of like full-on just deep resonance and butterflies and goosebumps to the remembrance that this is part of what I had always wanted, to just be on a spiritual path, be in that motion, be in the leading edge of this experience, highest potential place, and to share that with a partner, to be able to have those conversations, to be able to meet each other in that space. And it's so cool. Like, it just is. I just don't even know how to put it into words. It is like more delicious than like the best food or the best drive in a sports car or the best of those peak experiences. I mean, it's even more delicious than the best sex, which is really cool, but still somewhat fleeting and peak. This is a different kind of thing. This feels like I am seeing him as his inner being sees him, and he is seeing me as my inner being sees me. And together we're joyously romping around in this experience, full on moving in and out of that reflection creation mode. And we are really, really cool, awesome reflecting points for each other because we hold to that epic place. So every single day he watches my videos. He's probably my only viewer that's seen every single video. And every single day he says, they're amazing. There is something awesome. You are going to change the world by the things you have to say. If people just listen to it, there is tangible pieces in them that can shift something in a split second. How cool is that to just have that as my in the moment, in my face reflection, and then to step back and go, you know what? I created that. I created this epic being to constantly reaffirm for me what it is that I'm doing, to show me that way, to hold that light on for me. And then just the ease that we have in our relationship. Like I've shared somewhat before, like years ago, but also in the recent time too. And as we approach our anniversary of our aligned partnership, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But we have a relationship that is based on unconditionality. So I am happy to say that we have very, very limited to no what I would even describe as conflict. It doesn't even really register as that. One of us might notice the other is off. Hardly ever has anything to do with each other. Usually has to do with some other conditional thing that we are working on because we know our conditions don't make us happy, but hell, we're still human in some sense of that word, so we're still taking the cue from that on occasion. We're really good at being able to say to each other, are you sure that's where you want to go? I mean, I say really good, but at the same time with the recognition that often when we're in that off place and more identifying as human than soul, or human than inner being or source or God, we sometimes don't want to hear that in the moment because we already know and we're working on it. But I think that we're both getting better at having the ability to hold to that highest vibration and just call the other person home to it instead of dropping our own stuff and getting stuck in it or letting it trigger something for us. So I think that is another one of my beautiful creations, that we just have such ease and flow in our relationship. And like, there's none of that, like, oh, I better check things out with him, or what is he going to think about this? Like, I just don't have that. It just doesn't register. I just feel this purity in our love, in the joy that we share together. And I've always said, and I will continue to say, the reason that I chose to have a relationship, because I have such an epic relationship with myself, is because I want to see that played out loud. I see him as the closest to the physical representation of my inner being that I can access. Doesn't mean it's always like that. Doesn't mean every single second of my life and my experience with him, he shows up as source the exact way my inner being would be. No, that's not true, because he's filtering himself through the physical, and so am I through my vision of him and my projection of him. But ultimately, that is the relationship that we have, and we joyously dance and romp. And when we come up against something, we joyously dance and romp. It's not like it becomes the defining factor of our relationship. We just ebb and flow and roll with it and move with it and always come back. I mean, it's funny to think that sometimes one of us could get in what I'm now going to call the dip of doubt, the dip of that going back too fully into the identification of our identity, of our person, of our preferences, of all that stuff. We fall into that dip, and then we sit there too long, and then it seems like such a big deal. But then the minute you're out of the dip, you're like, oh, why did I even do that? So my advice always is, when you're off, when you're in what I'm going to call with the dip, just dance with the dip and get yourself out of the dip in any way it takes, and then you'll come back into that full remembrance of who you are, because we are on this journey and this is the work that we are doing. So remember, like I always say, it's just a game. We're just playing. These are all just ideas, things that can take us to new understandings, to new higher level experiences within the game, because we're here for a reason. We may as well play it up. We may as well do our best to understand the rules and then change them, follow them, create them, because it all is our creation. So everything that we believe is in essence part of the puzzle that we chose, because every belief is equally valid and true. We're just picking in any given moment, not as a conclusion, but in any given moment, what belief serves me to get to my next highest expansion. So have a great day. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.